Okay, thank you for coming along. Nice to see you, and also nice to see some old faces I haven't seen for a long, long time, including an MBA student from 13 years ago, which is nice, and Matt, who I haven't seen for years, it must be. Okay, so I guess we're all familiar with GPT or something like that. I'm not going to be, I've got 40 minutes, it's about demystifying. I'm not going to be going into a huge amount of technical detail, primarily because I don't know the technical detail. If I'm honest, I know the business side of things. I have led a university project which trained an AI locally for a firm to in effect do what GPT does on its own data. So that's a research experiment that I ran last summer. Learned a huge amount just in terms of the human side of things, but I'm happy to talk about things like that in a bit more detail if people are interested. But I'm focusing on kind of the top level business case, use cases and all the rest of it. In terms of my work, I spent half my time at the university researching, writing, teaching about management consultancy, and the other half of the time I advise consultancies on growth. And this is really how I got into AI, because obviously management consultancy is a professional service firm. Professional service firms like law, accounting, architecture, they're primarily knowledge firms. What AI does very, very well is generate good knowledge. It's not great knowledge at the moment in most cases, but it's good knowledge, and it seems to be getting exponentially better. So what I'll be talking about here is the basics in terms of what AI is. I'm not going to spend long on that at all. What it can do, and there's some kind of, oh, wow, if you didn't know about it moments. The music that you were listening to, I don't know if you picked up on it. It's very nice music when you came in. It was created by AI, and it does it very well. And I don't know if any of you are big Elvis fans, but Elvis is now singing all types of modern music with his wonderful Elvis voice. And so there's lots of interesting things that can be done there, and we'll cover a few of them in a bit. Then I'm going to deep dive on the consulting industry, but what applies to the consulting industry is going to be very applicable to most businesses that you're in, because a lot of the generic stuff around knowledge management, sales, marketing, etc. As I say, I haven't got a huge amount of time, so I'm going to talk relatively quickly, so apologies for that. So AI is, at the moment, we're talking about generative AI. And that's the big thing in the press. But AI has actually been around for 50 years in terms of being able to learn iteratively off data and make predictions of that. In effect, AI, simplifying, are prediction machines. And they predict very well because they've been given past data. What they're not great at is predicting what's going to happen if it's a completely unusual situation that they haven't seen before. But aside from generative AI, which is about creating text, creating images, creating music, etc., generating stuff, and I use text as a loose term for all of those things, there's lots of other really important parts of AI, which you use every day. You know, Sarah said at the beginning, hands up here who has used AI. Well, actually, you've all used AI. Anyone that's been on the Amazon site has used AI. Anyone that's used Alexa or that Google Home thing has used AI. Anyone that's interacted with a lot of government services has used AI. Pretty much every time you go online, you're using AI. Now, sometimes you'll notice it because it doesn't work very well. So you'll buy a dishwasher off Amazon, and then for the next 6 months, you'll be advertised dishwashers. Well, that's a very badly trained AI algorithm because it hasn't predicted that if someone buys a dishwasher, they're unlikely to buy 5 more in the next 6 months. So these are different types of AI, and I just want to, I'm not going to talk through them all, but the one we talk about most is our LLMs, which are very good at large language models, which are very good at generating text and predictive stuff. Expert systems, so you might have seen that AI can now predict cancer better than doctors can from scans. And the reason it can do that is because it's been fed 1 million scans, and it can spot things that sometimes expert doctors can't. Decision-making or predictions. So I was talking to someone just now about the use of AI in predicting illegal fraud in companies. And it can do that on the basis of behaviors and then change the system to anticipate fraudulent actions. Deep learning using neural networks. This is one of the oldest forms of AI, but anyone that's used Netflix and it generates personal recommendations for you, that's exactly what it's doing. Just learning what people like you who have watched your stuff in the past are likely to watch in the future, and then makes the recommendations off the basis of that, etc., etc. So what we're seeing a lot now, so traditionally these types of AI have been distinct. What's really made a difference over the last few months especially is, but this has been going on for 2 years really, is what they call multimodal AI, where these different forms of AI, whether it's visual, textual, analytical, predictive, whatever, are being fed into the same algorithms. So what you're getting is not only an exponential increase in the amount of data going into the AI systems, you're getting an exponential feedback loop. And that's really important to AI. So every time you say to Netflix, actually, I'm not interested in that film, you're giving it feedback on its algorithm. And that obviously happens automatically. So what you get is, I'm not going to talk about architecture, and anyone that's an IT architect will pull this to pieces very quickly. But in terms of a business architecture, what you've got is a feedback loop. So you've got vast amounts of data, often, that are being used to train an AI. It then learns from that, in inverted commas, and I'm not sure we need to use the inverted commas anymore because I'm not sure we learn much differently. It produces an outcome, and that might be a prediction, but the important part of that is that it gets feedback on that prediction. So anywhere where you've got, and then that feedback changes the system. So it changes the algorithm, or it changes the rules that constrain and enable the algorithm. Again, apologies for this is as technical as I'm going to get. So in effect, what you've got is a feedback loop, which is an algorithm. And that's the basis of most AI. There's obviously, once you get into different levels, the implementation of these is very different. So that's basically what's at the heart of everything that I'm talking about. In terms of what can it do, this is just a quick example. For those of you that haven't got your reading glasses on, I'm an academic giving a presentation to business owners about demystifying AI. Please create slide content for this topic, make it intelligent and research-based. I made a mistake there. I put by instead of but the algorithm would have noticed and said, well, actually, most people writing this type of stuff would say but, and so it corrected it. So they're the slides, came up with the references. Obviously, with references, you need to be careful of hallucination. So you need to check the references. Actually, I checked all of those references and they were all correct. Then I asked it to provide me with notes for slide number 5 that I could read out and end with a joke. So, and I sped that up by 50%. So it could be, the joke thing was a test because the humor of AI has traditionally been pretty awful. I mean, that's not the best, and it's probably been stolen from somewhere else. But it's not bad. It kind of made me chuckle a little bit. And that's what I want to point to, is the speed at which this is changing, and it's an exponential speed. Those of you that experimented with Midjourney, that creates pictures, 6 months ago, might have experimented with it and said, oh, this is pretty awful. It kind of gives me a few ideas. If you experiment with it now, Midjourney 6, it's mind-blowing how good it is. And that's just happened in 6 months. I gave this presentation, I thought I gave this presentation to a company 3 months ago. And I said to John, and John's been very understanding, thank you, John. I said to John, yes, I'll get the slides with you straight away, thinking I just need to cut and paste here. And then I looked at the slides a couple of days ago and thought, shit, everything's changed. And so I'm having to redo them. I'm currently writing a book on AI in the consulting industry. I'm not getting AI to do it for me, believe it or not. But I can't go to a publisher with it because it takes them a year to publish a book. And so I'm going to have to self-publish it. I don't want to because the university will hammer me for it. But it will be way out of date by the time it's published by a normal publisher. So that's in terms of text. AI has also created some incredible art that has won international competitions. It's created this new genre of art. If you squint your eyes a bit, you should see the word love across the middle. If you squint your eyes a bit here, you should see the word fashion, and so on. Companies have started using this for branding. It's kind of weird because it's kind of hidden. You'll be walking along and see a big picture, think that's beautiful, and then you'll want a Coca-Cola and you won't quite know why. They've been doing this for a long time, but not in this sense and not so quickly and cheaply. My sister's in the media. I got interviewed by someone from the Financial Times the other day, in fact, yesterday, and they were interviewing me about the impact of AI on the consulting industry. And I said, well, have you ever used it? And she said, no. So live, I got ChatGPT-4 to write the article for her. And there was a very long silence afterwards. And I don't believe, just in terms of brand, companies like The Sun or Financial Times or The Economist will ever over-rely on AI. But that's not to say that their journalists won't use it and won't tell people about it. We'll talk more about that shortly. This is a nice piece of software that I use called Numerous. It's free, so I'm sure half of you here spend a lot of time using Excel. I've been out of the consulting industry for 20 years, so my Excel skills aren't great, but I'm now using this for my CRM. And what it's doing, it does several different things. It can infer a formula if you compare two cells. It can generate a formula just if you tell you what it wants from natural language, and it can derive formulas from what you're seeing in front of you. So this is taking phone numbers and putting them into a standard format. It's inferring it, and it's going to load the phone numbers in a normal format. Then it's going to find out what state it is, and it will do that by an API query to the web. Now, a lot of Microsoft products are implementing this. So I've never seen so many short-lived companies at any point in history. What's happening is that someone will have a great idea for a startup. They will integrate with ChatGPT-4 or Bard or whoever, whatever, not quite who yet. And then in 6 months' time, ChatGPT-4 will have their own plugin that allows people to do it better. So what you're getting, unless you're creating new value with your own AI, it's likely that your business is going to be it's likely that your AI startup isn't going to last very long. I don't know if you've seen these. These are images that were given to people to look at when they were in an MRI scanner. This is research from about 3 months ago. These are the images that AI produced from looking at their brain scans. Now, in terms of what Musk is doing with Neuralink and things like that, this is really interesting because this isn't invasive. This is simply looking at the scans. And as you can see, they're pretty accurate, but this is after, okay, so the algorithms have been in development for a decade or so, but this is after 6 months of training. We start to think about what's going to be possible in 2 years of training, given that the change is going to be exponential or near exponential. We're opening doors. Karl Popper, the philosopher, said that the reason we can't predict the future of history is primarily due to technology. And this shows us why, because AI is essentially a black box. And this is what's different about it. I'm not necessarily an AI evangelist. I don't think it's going to transform everything in the world. But the important thing is that we don't know. And that it's almost like Brexit or Trump, is that lots of people are making predictions, but I can guarantee that very few of them are going to come true. And so when AI learned to code, nobody knew when it was going to actually start coding effectively. When it started to speak French, nobody knew when it was going to start to speak French fluently. And that's because it's learning, and we have no prediction inside the black box because there's no one inside the black box with the algorithm holding its hand when the outputs are going to, and some of those outputs have been quite surprising. So some of them have been completely blindsided by what we're doing. And so we'll talk about risks later, but there's obviously a societal risk beyond the, generalized AI in terms of it gaining consciousness. There's obviously a risk there in terms of unpredicted consequences. We'll talk more about that in a second. It codes very well, but it's recently started coding from pictures. So you can now give it a sketch, a wireframe, for those of you in the CX space, and it will code HTML or whatever you want off the basis of that. I had 2 students working with me last year, and they worked for one of my clients producing a market research report. I said, this is really good. You could probably make a business out of this. And they said, we've got no idea about how to set up a business. So I gave them a bit of structure, but the logo, the brand, the website, and the images on the website all came from AI and cost us virtually nothing. So in terms, again, of impact on the economy, it's not going to be insignificant. When you talk about writing, coding, art, graphic design, website design, etc. This is interesting. So I've had rewind on my, I've got terrible memory, as Sherry well knows. And I blame my children, but it might be early onset. You never know. I am an academic. This is a wonderful app that records everything that you do. And if you're in a meeting, it transcribes everything. And it remembers everything and can give you analysis of it. So I can ask Rewind, oh, who was that guy I was talking to the other day about strategy in the telco industry? And it will tell me. Now, which is a little bit creepy, but a little bit interesting as well. I personally find it very useful. But then I got an email recently that offered me this as one of the first users of Rewind. And this is a little mic that you wear. And so it records all your conversations. Now, some of you might be thinking, whoa, creepy as hell. Any consultancy partners or law partners or architecture partners in the firm will be thinking, oh my God, if I can teach AI to learn from my conversations with my juniors and with my clients, all these senior consultants that keep coming to me and bothering me aren't going to do so anymore. The first port of call is going to be to ask the AI. So I'm now recommending, I'm not recommending my clients to use this because it is creepy as hell, but I'm recommending all my clients to use Firefly, which is a wonderful AI transcription. It comes along to all my meetings. It's in this meeting. It will not only transcribe everything I'm saying very, very accurately, it will also provide me actions, provide me notes, and allow me to ask natural language questions. So when I say natural language, I mean the form of voice I'm using now. I can do that verbally, or I can type things into it. Now, I've used that data and also the 1 million or so words I've written on the consulting industry to train a little AI bot, a little Joe bot. And I've given it to my clients to say, if you've got a question, you don't want to phone me up and you can't wait for an email, just ask the AI bot. And I thought, well, I'll do this as an experiment and then I'll make improvements to it. I haven't had a single recommendation for improvement. Everyone said the feedback has been really good, to the point that I'm starting to think, maybe I don't give it to them anymore. Anyway, I could talk about this type of stuff all day. I'm an academic at heart. I'm very much based around research. These are some insights from research. So I'm sure many of you will know some of these. Obviously, there's caveats. We can question the method and all the rest of it. These are the high-level findings. AI is more accurate at diagnosis than doctors, but interestingly, it's much more empathetic than doctors. People report it as being more empathetic, which I found very strange. But then when you go into a doctor's, typically in the UK, they want you out of there in 5 to 10 minutes. But with an AI, you can chat to it. And you can chat verbally or you can chat through text, and it will give you as much information and as much time as you want. So I'm now trying to running an experiment next year, to use AI formative feedback, not for their marking, but formative feedback for students. Because my smallest class up until a few years ago was 350 students. I have no time at all to offer them friendly feedback on their essays, but I can train AI to give better feedback than I could give them because it's more detailed, it's got more time, and it won't skim it in 3 minutes. Anything else interesting? So there was a study recently, AI made stories more novel and interesting. There was a competition, AI created 88% of the top business ideas. These were business startup ideas that business school in America ran. And obviously, I'm interested in the consulting industry, and there's a study coming out of Boston Consulting Group showing that management consultants using AI finished more tasks, completed them faster, but completed them at 40% higher quality. Now, it's the quality, innovation, and creativity that I would really emphasize here. Because when we were thinking about automation and robotics in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, we were thinking that robots and automation were going to do the crap jobs, and we would all be philosophers, artists, and thinkers. What's actually happening is it's looking like it's going to be the other way around. That AI is actually more creative than 90% of the people in this room, more innovative than 90% of the people in this room, and given enough training, might actually be better at your jobs generally. Now, that's not to say that there aren't very, very important parts of our job that require just the psychological reassurance of a face-to-face interaction. But it is surprising, and it's one of those not unintended outcomes, but perhaps unpredictable outcomes from AI, how good it is at creativity. Okay, so that's kind of the fun, wow, look at this stuff. So getting a little bit more practical, if you own a business and you're thinking about your business, there's obviously the low-hanging fruit. Apps like Firefly that you can invite to meetings. It will transcribe it. It can do live subtitles on your talks. It can create conversational assets, quite useful if you're in compliance or something like that. Because it can give you feedback on your calls. This person doing this call broke banking regulations 3 times. Here's some feedback on how not to do it again. There's content creation, which everyone here knows about, so I'm not going to talk about. So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit. With more effort, if you're prepared to put in more of effort, and it depends on the business case, and by effort I typically mean cost and time, there's too many third-party apps out there that I'll talk more about this in a second, that can improve different parts of your organization. Something I use, and I've only started using it in the last week, and it is incredible. Obviously, in my consultancy side of things, I sell. In effect, I need to sell to get the cash through the door. Now, which means I send a lot of emails and I contact a lot of people on LinkedIn. I've downloaded something called Crystal. Crystal analyzes, if I'm about to send an email to someone, it will find that person on LinkedIn, look at their posts and analyze what personality type they are, using the DISC framework that I'm not a big fan of, but it's a good start, and then provide me with writing recommendations. Now, you might say, well, how accurate is it? Well, I tried it out on 4 people that I know very, very well. I know what their personality types are, including myself. And it was accurate. And the recommendations that it gave, and it's been such an education for me, because we all write emails in terms of our own voice, our own personality, even if we're in sales, even if we're bright, even if you're empathetic. This is stopping me doing that. And that is mind-blowing from my perspective, just to think about how other people write emails that are much more friendly. I got told off recently by the university for not being friendly enough, and this won't surprise the people that perhaps know me in my emails. So there's things like that that could be useful. There's a very good website called Product Hunt, and that lists it lists all SaaS products, but it's got a category for AI, and you can search it for different things in your space. High effort, creating your own large language model. McKinsey have done this. Obviously, Microsoft, Google, and Apple have done it. Bloomberg did it. It costs about 100 million. In effect, it's your own chat to GPT-4 that's trained on your stuff rather than fine-tuned on stuff that you put in at the end. And there's obviously, a lot of people are thinking about bespoke AI software for their firms or for their services. Huge caveats around that I'm happy to talk about later. Right, one thing I wanted to talk about is AI agents. Hands up who's heard of AI agents. Okay, so these are kind of mind-blowing, because I don't know if those of you that have used ChatGPT-4, in order to improve it, when it gives you some text, you have to push back and say, well, actually think about this perspective and change this, or write from this perspective. If it creates code, You need to say, can you please check your own code? And if you give it a whole set of instructions, firstly, you're having to do that. But secondly, if it's within one window, the AI itself starts to get confused and the quality goes out. In effect, what you're doing with agents is you are giving them separate manifestations of the AI, different personalities, and allowing them to talk to each other. So in effect, what you're getting is role-playing AI personalities or roles in a chat room. And so these things, and you can do this anyway. So in fact, the best way to do this is to give you an example.
Hello, I am here at your service. What would you like to do?
I'd like to order a pizza.
What type of pizza would you like to order?
An 11-inch pepperoni pizza, regular crust.
Okay, great. I will first search to find a good pizza place in your area. I have found a pizza place called Za Pizza. I will now create a pizza ordering bot who will call this location for you and will order your pizza.
Super amazing pizza ordering bot, reporting for duty. I have been instructed by the other AI to order you a pizza. I will now call Za Pizza using the Twilio voice API and order you a pizza. Hello, I would like an 11-inch regular pepperoni pizza for pickup, please.
11-inch what, sorry?
Just a plain 11-inch pepperoni pizza, please.
Okay, and what time would you like to pick that up for?
I would like it now, please.
I can have that ready for you in about 20 minutes?
Yes.
Awesome. And can I get a name for the order?
My name is Josefina.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you in about 20 minutes, okay?
Goodbye.
Bye.
All right.
Okay, so what we have there actually we have three bots playing with each other. We've got the Google search engine, you've got the interface bot, and you've got the pizza ordering bot. And they've been separated because if you try and combine those roles, you're going to get a bit of a mess. But that's just three, and they're connected to each other with APIs. And in effect, they not only do the thing that you have tasked them to do, but they also learn how to do it better based on your feedback and the feedback of the various interactions they have with the real world. So in effect, you've got different agents producing an outcome. The great thing about agents is that you can just give them a goal. Now, you'll notice here there's a task creation agent. So you don't need to give it the steps to achieve the goal. It will create the steps for you. You don't even need to be able to, you don't have to code this now. You can just do it by natural language, talking to Gen AI, for example, or Gen GPT about what you want the goal to be. There's about 7,000 plug and play agents out there that you can use free of charge. So let's think about how this can be used for businesses. I mean, I've got my book, and if I wanted to do it through AI, I would create a few agents. I'd create a writer, obviously. Then I want a project manager, because I need a project manager to manage me. Then you've got the researcher who would go away and find the stuff. You might have a character developer. You might have a case study writer, because all of these are relatively specialist skills. And if you try and bombard them all into one AI, you're going to be in a mess. Now, again, this has only really become usable in the last 3 months. But this, to me, is the most interesting development, apart from perhaps multimodal AI. But this is probably the most interesting development since ChatGPT was launched. I'm going to talk quickly now. So this isn't going to be relevant to all of you, but management consultancy, obviously very, very interested in this. They're a knowledge-based business. I did a quick survey. Consultants do use AI. 2/3 of them are using AI. 2/3 of those are using it to save time, but some of them using it to increase quality. The most interesting thing here is I said, who knows that you're using AI? And 2/3 of them, their bosses didn't know that they were using it. And there's very good reasons for that. Sometimes it's been banned, but also perhaps you're putting your job on the line. Perhaps rather than recruiting 10 senior consultants, they're going to be recruiting 3 senior consultants. That probably will be the case simply because of creative destruction that Schumpeter came up with. In terms of this specific use case, so I'm drilling right down, only 32% of partner time is spent selling. This is a big problem that I encounter with my clients because partners should be selling all the time. So what I did for one of my clients, I kind of went into each step of the sales process and looked at how AI could minimize the amount of admin time that would free up time for partners to to actually just be selling, to be having the meetings, to be having the calls, to be doing the nice human outreach. I presume these slides will be going round. Will they, Sarah? Where's Sarah gone? Yeah, of course, sorry. So some of these are bloody brilliant. I mean, that CRM integration one allows you, it listens to your phone call or listens to the meeting that you're in and then updates your CRM system. Every partner hates updating CRM systems, but it's got to be done. It's a company asset. And this does it automatically, takes the key points, takes the learning points, and so that next time you open it, the information is there ready for the next thing. I'm not going to talk through that, but the key point is that that I think is the 7th bullet point. I make the call. That's the situation that we want to be getting to, where the use of your human bit is being maximized and everything else is. Now, this is why I wanted to call this presentation Automation and AI, because obviously AI by itself is pretty useless. You need a whole load of stuff around it. So if I was in a business owner's position, this is odd because normally it happens the other way around. Normally you say, what does the business need to achieve? But there's been so many technological developments that it's really important to know what's out there, so what's possible. And that kind of interacts with what does the business want to achieve. But sometimes a lot of my clients have completely transformed their business because of the technological possibilities that are available now, but weren't available 5 years ago. One thing I would call your attention to is how tech ready are we? As with any technology, you don't just dump technology in a company and it works. There's a readiness factor that is very, very important. People always talk about the risks of AI that I'll cover in the next slide, but also what are the risks of doing nothing? What are your competitors doing? What is chat? What's Amazon doing? What's Apple doing? The risks, we could do a whole day on the risks of AI. You probably know what they are, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. Privacy, data leakage, what happens if someone gets your client data? Hallucination, bias, transparency and accountability. Who's accountable if it goes wrong? Jobs. The final thing I put up there is over-dependency. I use ChatGPT-4 a lot. I've noticed I've started to get a little bit lazy in my thinking. I haven't seen any research on this. I don't know if it's just me, but there we are. Thank you for your time. Any questions? Sorry, I went through that very quickly. So if you're a bit, take your time, have a think.
We've got an online question, Joe, to get things going. We've gone international this morning, so got a question from Montpellier Business School.
Very nice.
Donoshti, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Do you want to unmute and ask your question? Suggests I haven't pronounced it correctly.
While we're waiting, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Joe. Very interesting, as I thought it would be.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
You're the first person talking about AI who has mentioned causal loop analysis.
Yep.
And that is really important. We use that. We're an AI company developing solutions in that area. We use it all the time to test what we're doing and to test the greater world outside this specific solution that we're working on. The great thing is it can be expressed mathematically as well, which is right up our street because that is our core product. So for everyone who's listening, they should actually think about this because it's all part of the system. So just doing something that fixes the problem in front of you at the time might actually work, but it doesn't solve the long-term problems. And that's a very good aspect from you to actually do, to make that connection.
Thank you. Thank you. I say that partly because I got burnt. So with the project I did last summer, we didn't spend enough time thinking about the feedback loops from the company and the testing, the rigorousness of the testing that needs to happen if you're creating your own LLM or fine-tuning your own LLM offline.
Thanks. Can we have the online
participant from
I
Montpellier.
think Donachi was struggling with his mic, but I think he's okay now.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe, for the presentation. I've just discovered I was DI on Crystal. I'm head of the MSc in Digital Transformation and Business Consulting at Montpellier Business School in France. So it's particularly relevant to me. My question is, if you look at consulting firms, usually when they hire junior associate, they trust them with certain tasks that are deemed as quote unquote low value, such as data analysis, preparing PowerPoint presentations. And it's usually used as a way to detect grit or talent, however you want to call it, and then they can move up to senior position. Do you think that with the arrival of AI, there is a risk that this traditional model will be disrupted? Or do you think that because they are digital natives, or they are deemed to be, they will be only interested with AI, in which case the way they train new consultants will change? Thank you so much.
It's a really good question, and thank you for your kind words. So that's a very good question. So again, I'm not in the business of crystal ball gazing, but I am already seeing evidence that the shape of consulting firms is changing, partly down to AI, partly down to client demand, partly down to automation. And you know, very often what's called AI actually isn't AI. It's a Visual Basic lookup. But so your traditional professional service firm is a triangle shape, and the people at the top make vast amounts of money because they leverage the people at the bottom. Well, if you don't need so many of those people, great. So you're making more money because you're paying fewer people. But what happens in 5 years' time when you used to have a whole large cohort going up to them? So if you think about a consulting firm or any professional service firm, you've got your grinders, your minders, your finders. The finders are highly skilled. They've got great interpersonal relationships. They're great at customer sales, the interpersonal side of things. And that's an apprenticeship model. What happens if you cut your apprentices by 2/3? Where does the talent come from? And that's a question that I don't think anyone has answered. And I actually haven't seen any consulting firm dealing with that seriously. So I think it's a risk in the next 5 years. In terms of what the answer is, I don't know. The consulting industry itself is under huge amounts of pressure because graduates are now going to Google, Meta, Facebook, as well as the banks. And consultancies aren't making the same margins that they used to. So I think this is a complex, tricky problem that people haven't thought about. And to be honest with you, I don't know the answer.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Cheers, thank you. You were going to ask a question, then I'll come to you.
Thanks. I was going to ask, it's good that you put up the slide around the risks. Obviously, that's something that needs to be thought of. But what about the side aspect around the ethics of it? For example, if when your book is published, that then gets absorbed by AI and is then used without reference or payment, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah, what do you think?
I think it's something that's not being thought about at the moment. And I think it'll come back to bite people if they don't consider it, because people know their own work and they will start to identify that their work is being used, albeit through an AI. So I think those levels of the check-in and the making sure that it's used correctly needs to be as important as the opportunities, which obviously are massive. Yeah.
I believe if you look at historically at what has happened when there have been massive technological shifts, and I think AI is one of those, and I don't think we've even started to see the impact on society. Governments have tended to step in under pressure from the populace. And if you look at the theft of copyrighted works, you look at the impact on jobs, and you look at other aspects of the impact on society, there's certainly going to be pressure on government to act, but government aren't, certainly in the modern world, governments aren't used to acting in that way outside of COVID. So again, I don't know what the answer is. I'm not going to predict it, but it's certainly a tension. You're right. Hello.
Hi, Joe. Thanks very much for that. You mentioned consultancy as being obviously a knowledge sector.
Yep.
I think education is almost perhaps the ultimate knowledge sector. And I wondered if what your thoughts are on the implications for universities in particular from any of this technology.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the reason I'm hesitant is because for the last 20 years, people have been shouting about the death of universities, and university revenue has just gone up and up and up and up. And universities, you know, even now it is worth, financially, it's still worth people coming to university, spending a lot of money, even on a sociology degree. I don't mean even on a sociology, nothing wrong with sociology. My wife is a wonderful sociologist. Sorry. But it still has a greater impact than the opportunity cost of not going. What I have seen, so I'm obviously very keen on, I'm very interested, and what I've seen suggests that there is significant disruption coming. Number one, in terms of student feedback, but then in terms of student learning. I mean, I've just seen so many wonderful tools out there that may not be perfect now, but in terms of role playing, in terms of simulations, in terms of, you know, virtual reality, getting your hands dirty on the job. You know, I have a simulation that I've been using for trainee consultants for a long time. I can now put that into AI and they can have a live verbal chat with an AI partner or a client who's angry about something. And then you think, well, what happens to the lecturers? And so I think we're going to get a similar type of thing. Academia isn't all about teaching, but I think specifically in terms of education, there's a huge opportunity to improve. And to be honest with you, speaking personally, not on behalf of the university, I think a lot of universities need to kick up the arse when it comes to the quality of their education. Not Cardiff, of course, but
top quality.
Yeah, there's a big challenge coming down the road, and I don't see universities preparing for it very well. Yeah, good question.
Got another question online. I think Anghar's going to read it out for us.
I'm just going to ask on behalf of Geraint Jones, who's involved in academic work looking at compassionate leadership and the impact of it on staff in the NHS. If AI is 9 times more empathetic than doctors, could AI be used as a critical learning tool for compassionate leadership?
Yeah, it could, but you know, why, you know, you kind of think, well, let's cut out the middleman. So, you know, if AI is doing something much, much better than a human can do it, why try and get that human, you know, spend a vast amount of money and time getting the human up to that point? Why not get those humans skilled in the areas that they can add value where the AI can't? So yes, I guess is a theoretical answer, but from a business and value perspective, I'd say no.
Any more questions? No?
Yeah, great. Go for it, please.
It's about ChatGPT, Web3, Wi-Fi 6, 5G plus networks, and so on. I think that all of those things are more suited to augmentation than automation. What do you think?
Yeah, so someone gave me a very good metaphor the other day with AI at the moment and said, it's like, I didn't watch the Marvel things, but with Iron Man, there's a guy called Stark, and he puts on the suit, not the suit, because that would be messy. He puts on the suit and it augments his self. So he's still bright, he still gives it instructions, but he can do much, much more within that. I think that's happening now. It is happening now. I think the interesting thing is what's going to happen in 2 years' time when do you need the man in the machine? Can it do better? You know, can it make better decisions than Stark without him being in there? I'm not answering your question, am I? You were asking something else. Go on.
If we take Web3 as an example,
yep.
The current phase that we're in is about automation.
Yep.
Right? That's actually not where we're going to end up.
Agreed.
Because we'll be augmenting it with all the things that you covered today,
yep.
plus the whole lot more that are coming down the track. So getting sort of distracted by automation is my view, not the right thing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So yes, I sorry, I understand your question now. Yes, agree completely. I would say, but you almost need the automation stage before you get to the augmentation stage. And because I deal with boutiques, most companies I see, they're struggling to get to the automation stage. But certainly, I don't think you need this to be finished before the augmentation starts. But certainly, you need systems, processes, and that baseline of just data cleanliness that most companies don't have before you can get to certainly the AI side of augmentation. But you know this better than I do.
Daniel?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Really interesting presentation. I think you mentioned a few things around health. I'm speaking from a healthcare perspective, I guess. You speak about business readiness for AI and tech change. I guess, what research or experience have you got around public readiness? We already know about concerns ethically about AI being out there, but as it's already being rolled out, without people knowing about it, you start talking about cancer diagnosis by AI rather than a doctor, regardless of the benefit, quickness, etc. What's the population readiness, I guess, that we've got to consider?
Yeah, really good question. Really good question. This is especially close to my heart. My last big consulting project for corporate was with 3, the mobile phone company. I helped design them and launch them. And a lot of the stuff that we created then, this was 20 years ago, we are just seeing being launched now. And some of the reason for that is because the public are only digitally mature enough to deal with that now, but also psychologically in terms of what we are used to in terms of invasions of privacy. My own feeling based on what I've seen in the mobile space, and this obviously isn't just about AI, it's about any form of technology, is that there's a trade-off that people make eventually. So there is this habituation, there's this getting accustomed to the technology, but there's a trade-off. People, TikTok isn't being hit by all the privacy concerns. Facebook isn't being hit, might be being hit in front of politicians, but billions of people are using it. So I think we make a trade-off when we think about what is the utility of this to me versus what privacy. Now, it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen that Google have relaunched the glasses that they've had. Now, last time when they launched these glasses that recorded everything, people getting punched in the face in pubs. But now there doesn't seem to be that kind of pushback. Now, it may well be. So there is a maturity thing. I don't want to use the word maturity because it means like, oh, I'm grown up, I'm okay with this invasion of my privacy, which isn't the way to talk about it. But I think there's a trade-off that the public make between utility versus privacy. And so that places the onus on the AI developers and implementers to do it properly, to do it well, I guess. What do you think?
I guess I can see the value of pre-alerting people that they could be prone to cancer by mass scanning of health records. Why wouldn't you, if you can know early and stop getting to stage 4 before it's possible? But I'm speaking as me, not the NHS. But I think there's a lot of talk about regulation of AI going through government at the minute, more so in America, I think, than the UK. I'm not sure if that will help with the digital maturity, AI maturity of the population, simply because it's mind-blowing. I think when we speak about maturity, we think about Siri can put a reminder on my phone or tell me when to take the chicken out of the oven. And that's really low-level stuff in comparison to what we see here today and other environments. So I think the public don't know what's going to hit them. We've seen that growth in 3 months or 6 months in ChatGPT. It helps me write my R code, which is really very helpful. But really, people don't know how much we're already reliant on levels of AI, Amazon, Netflix, or whatever. And I think that will have a risk to public sector using AI with public data. So whether we're talking health, whether we're talking passport office or driving licenses, etc. So I think it's going to be a very difficult place to be in a year or two's time when AI starts coming down the chain and people understand it slightly more, but not enough to really make an educated decision on, do I want to wipe myself off digital and go back to having a notepad and pen rather than an iPad or whatever? I don't know where we're going to go, but I think that's more of a risk to business and organizations than the business readiness side of it, I think.
Yeah. Let me give you a very quick example. So very quick example. So I was looking at some of the research on call centers, and any research on the use of AI to supplement or replace call center workers up until 6 months ago had a very negative outcome. Research that's been done in the last 6 months shows now that customers generally, not only is it obviously cheaper and faster, you don't have to wait for ages, but also customers are reporting higher satisfaction levels with the AI than they were with the outsourced call agent in Mumbai or wherever. So again, it's coming back to this, does the bloody stuff work and how useful is it to me versus what privacy I'm giving up?
I guess it begs the question, the ethics behind globalization. Exporting call centers to Dubai or whatever, and the ethics behind that. I guess we're with a new moral quandary of that ethics. Is it better to have a robot doing it, or is it better to have somebody doing it in bad conditions that we are endorsing as countries that can afford to do that?
Yes, and on that specific point, our strategy in the West has been keep the creative job, or certainly in Britain and the US, keep the creative jobs, outsource the manufacturing and low skill jobs. Once AI can do the creative jobs, what do we offer as a country? Or what does the West offer? I mean, that, to be honest, that argument's dead anyway, but happy to talk about it.
Okay, last question from Akmal online. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the great presentation and great insights. My question is really that the human side of things is how to prevent ourselves, as you said, from getting slack and lose our creativity. And what, in your view, is a good time to use or start using AI to keep our human creativity and imagination intact? So it's, I think, perhaps humans versus the machine, I suppose. But any steps to avoid that dependency in your last point in the presentation, what you said?
I mean, in the short, thank you. That's a really good question. I mean, in the short term, we can, artists have never been motivated primarily by money. So you would hope, if we go back to sort of Medici times, that there would still be the Michelangelos who loved their art and then eventually became wealthy off the back of it. I think in the short term, there's opportunities to get creative with AI. It's certainly not at the point where it can, and I don't know if it will ever be at the point where it can replace human creativity entirely, although I don't see any reason logically why not. But certainly in the short term, there's lots of opportunities. And I think as a university, we need to be doing this, is training students how to use AI creatively, coming up with new ideas, integrating it in different ways, training it in different ways, and also being a little bit creative about your point about how we deal with the ethical side of things, the regulation, thinking outside the box, changing the model that we've used for the last few years. I think the big shift here is how quickly it's hitting us. We've always had to deal with technological shifts. They've usually happened at least over a period of decades, if not centuries. But now we're talking months and years. And when AI, when it first started getting talked about seriously, I kind of put it in the same box as, Bitcoin or NFTs or any of the other fads. But from what I can see, this is something quite qualitatively different and more impactful.
So thanks so much. It was so interesting.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Can't lie, it scared me quite a lot. And it reminds me of when we did our GDPR breakfast briefing, where the audience looked stunned about what was afore them. There's a lot afore us in this AI space. And I just wanted to sort of close that our Dean, Professor Rachel Ashworth, she sort of said to me, "Oh, Sarah, the last breakfast briefing, there's not much about public value there, and where's the ethics of what you're describing? It's not really very Cardiff Business School, because we always like to, yes, profit's very important, but we don't always want to push profit, productivity." And there was something about the summary of today's session, which was very business. And I sort of said, "Oh, that's because AI wrote it, Rachel. We're trying to make a point that AI can write the blurb for us." But actually, thinking from what I've heard for you today, we could have responded. We could have said, "Can you stress some of the public value elements of this?" And we could have got it to write a better, more public value
Definitely,
business
yeah.
piece. And I think that links to what you were saying about laziness. We could have just pushed it that little bit further so that it was more aligned to the public value business school at Cardiff Business School. So lots to think about. Thank you so much for coming. And we finished on time, which is always something that I really care deeply about. Hang around, have tea, coffee, croissants. Thanks so much for coming, and thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.